This is CBC Compass.
This is Thursday, February 20th. Here's what's happening now on Prince Edward Island. Rental rules. New residential tenancy draft legislation released today aims to reduce rent evictions and illegal rent increases, and the province is seeking your input. So, for those looking for a place to rent and those already renting, what does the draft legislation mean for you? Advocacy groups react to the proposed changes. And tonight, cold temperatures meant a busy day at Charlottetown's new Community Outreach Centre. It opened its doors in January in Charlottetown. We'll check in to see how people are using it. Good evening. Thank you for joining us on Compass. I'm Louise Martin. There could be big changes coming for tenants and landlords on PEI. The province has released its proposed new legislation around rental properties, and the hope is the changes will help fix some of the challenges in the rental market. Carrie Campbell joins us in studio tonight with some of the details. So, Carrie, what's changing?
In short, Louise, a lot is changing. These aren't just tweaks on the old legislation. This is an entirely new bill, the most significant changes in rental law on PEI in 30 years. So let's start with the term rent eviction. When a landlord evicts a tenant so they can make improvements to a unit, landlords would have to give 6 months notice, up from the current 60 days. The renovations would have to be extensive enough to require them to get a building permit and for the apartment to be vacant, and tenants who feel that they were evicted in bad faith can complain to IRAC up to a year later. Amanda Blakeney is a lawyer working with the province on these changes.
I'm hoping to see fewer illegal rent increases, for one, which would lead to maybe more security and stability for tenants in residential rental properties going forward. I think it'll take some of the fear and the stress around being evicted away from those individuals.
Carrie, she said there she hopes to see fewer illegal rent increases. What is that exactly?
Louise, without getting special permission from IRAC, landlords can only increase their rents once in a year, only up to the maximum allowable rent increase. Now, what would change under this legislation is how that is calculated. There would be a formula for IRAC to follow and a maximum. It couldn't be higher than 2.5%. Some other changes in this legislation around emergency repairs. Landlords have to provide a number to their tenants where they can be reached, and if they don't make needed repairs, their tenant can do that and bill them for it. If the landlord doesn't pay, the tenant can apply to have the cost deducted from their rent. There are also benefits for landlords. They'd be able to charge for bounced checks, or if they have to put a tenant's items into storage, they could also evict tenants faster if they don't pay the rent. On the enforcement side, the maximum penalty IRAC could impose would jump from $2,000 to $10,000.
How would enforcement work under this new legislation, Carrie?
Well, it'd still be complaints driven, so infractions would have to be reported to IRAC, something we were told today. Tenants are much less likely to come forward right now given the current rental market. All the power is with landlords given the very low vacancy rate on PEI. Now, the province says these changes benefit both sides, landlords and tenants, although there does seem to be a lot more here to support tenants' rights. So this is now going out to public consultation. The expectation that the legislation will come up for debate during the spring sitting of the legislature.
All right, Carrie, thanks so much. That's Carrie Campbell in studio tonight. The proposed changes, as you heard, are significant and obviously would have big impacts on people who rent on PEI. Travis Kingdon has more on the reaction to government's ideas.
Advocacy groups on the island are welcoming these suggested changes. They see them as positive, making life better for renters in the province. Some groups say the moves around apartment renovations especially are responding to a real need in the community.
You know, hearing people who are rent evicted quite regularly and they're only given 2 months notice to try to find somewhere with our low vacancy rate is almost impossible, and people are having to put way too much percentage of their income towards their housing, and when they're evicted and of an affordable rent and trying to find somewhere else is near impossible, and it puts people in a really, really tough situation.
Also included would be the ability for tenants to break lease if they or a dependent family member has experienced domestic violence. And this would bring those rules in line with other provinces.
Whatever policies can be put into place that support people moving on for abuse removes barriers and therefore decreases the overall risk that people experience as a result of living in an unsafe situation. So it's very damaging for people to have bad references in the rental community. So if they have a lease and they break it or they're worried about breaking it, they may be worried about that impacting their ability to rent housing down the road.
The PEI Fight for Affordable Housing group also likes that the government is asking the public for feedback on what they think of these proposed changes. Now, the group hopes the government takes those talks seriously and listens to what all Islanders have to say. Travis Kingdon, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Jay's here now with our first look at the weather and a cold day today and an even colder morning, so bundle the kids up off to school tomorrow, right, Jay?
Yeah, when I talk about overnight low temperatures, I'm actually usually referring on a typical night to those early morning temperatures, and this would be the third time this winter we have the potential to see those early morning temperatures at or below -20. Happened already just a few days back in the month of February. The last time before that was in January. So only 2 times at Charlottetown Airport, where we get that official temperature observation, have we seen temperatures at or below -20. Very good chance much of PEI will be around or below that mark tomorrow morning. Temperatures this hour between -13 and -14 with the winds feeling into the, near to mid -20s. So -19 wind chill in Charlottetown. Winds have eased in the last hour. -24 wind chill where it's a bit breezier up in North Cape. There's a look at those winds out of the west at the moment. We're going to look at that sky to continue to remain quite clear this evening and overnight, and that will pave the way under a nice ridge of high pressure extending its way in from our west for very sunny skies tomorrow. Although with clear skies and lighter winds, that's a recipe for cooler temperatures, and that's going to be the case tomorrow. So this evening, that temperature will continue to drop off through the overnight hours, anywhere from -19, -20. Into tomorrow morning, I think, is where we'll actually experience our coolest temperatures, and the range for PEI would be -19 to even below -22. With the winds, even though they're easing, it will still feel closer to -30. Not much of an improvement, but a bit milder into the afternoon tomorrow. Lots of sunshine, and as for when it will get back to seasonal values, the weekend. And I'll get you those details with your full forecast in just a few.
All right. Thank you, Jay. Well, there will be a new environment minister for PEI tomorrow. CBC News has learned that Progressive Conservative MLA Natalie Jameson will get the job. Premier Dennis King is expected to make the announcement. Jameson was elected in the deferred election held in July. She will also be named minister responsible for the city of Charlottetown, as well as the minister responsible for the status of women. Brad Trivers is the current Minister of Environment, Water and Climate Change. He's also Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning, and he will keep that portfolio. A swearing-in ceremony is planned for tomorrow morning at Government House. And the Premier of PEI will have a call with the Prime Minister tonight about the ongoing protests over the pipeline project in Western Canada. All the premiers will take part. Last night, they spoke together about the dispute and how each province is being affected economically. Premier Dennis King says there were some differences of opinion on how to resolve the situation.
I think it's probably naive and wrong to look at this strictly as a blockade. I think we have to look at what are the underlying issues that have caused us to get to here. And anything we do going forward will need to begin with obviously the immediate end to the blockades, but actually a commitment to figure out how we move forward next and repair the relationships with our Indigenous communities and perhaps redefine what that role is.
King says the propane situation on the island is precarious because much of that propane comes to this region via rail. He says right now the supply is adequate, but he says the situation is being monitored closely, and we will have more on the protests a little later on Compass. Charlottetown police are investigating what they describe as another case of road rage. It happened in Charlottetown on January 27th in the parking lot of the Sherwood Medical Center. Police released security video on their website, and a tip into the Crime Stoppers line identified the man. He is now facing assault charges.
It's, again, another unfortunate incident. We urge people to take a breath and think about their actions instead of getting caught up in the moment. These incidents are totally preventable. We understand that there's frustration sometime in the roadway.
Police say the alleged victim suffered minor injuries and that because the matter is before the courts, they can't say anything more about what exactly happened. PEI's only ski hill is closed. There's a problem with the chairlift at Mark Arend Ski Park. Crews at the hill noticed that problem on Monday. They say it's with the gearbox, and the company that installed it is trying to find a replacement or replacement parts. The hill will still be closed tomorrow, and the hope is that it will be open again by Saturday. Well, today's cold weather made for a busy day at Charlottetown's newest outreach center. Clients warmed up at 211 Euston Street, while the people who run it continue to look for long-term plans to help those in need. Brian Higgins reports.
It was cold outside, but inside, the coffee pot was on, the computers were humming, and the people who needed a place to go found it. Mariah Singleton was one of them.
Just to get warmed up and do my resume, and I think it's a great place for people, for helping people with getting homes and everything.
Singleton is one of nearly 150 people who have registered with the Community Outreach Center. It opened January 15th, and with repeat visits, they've had more than 1,100 pairs of feet through the door. It's a one-stop service center with laundry, showers, and connections to other services, things like housing, legal advice, addictions counseling. Jessica Esky says it's now her go-to place for shelter from the cold.
What is it in there that you liked best?
Oh, probably the healthy, sober social atmosphere, and no one really there is causing a ruckus. It's a calm place to be.
This is a pilot project. It ends April 1st. Already, organizers are asking themselves what comes next. Organizers are looking for a new home for the center. The current building has accessibility issues, and they're seeing needs such as better transportation to get people there. They say they'll be talking to the people who know best what's needed.
Of course, we want to hear from our clients and the people who come into the center to best serve them, and they're going to tell us, and that's what the whole idea of a community outreach center is, focused on the clients and our services that we were able to provide, and they'll provide us the feedback.
The center continues to operate 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Redmond says it's too soon to say what will happen after April 1st. Brian Higgins, CBC News, Charlottetown.
And we have an opportunity tonight to hear about homelessness from a man who has lived it. He's part of a poetry exhibit at the Guild in Charlottetown. It's called A Concrete Bed. Matthew Dunn wrote a poem called How Did I Get Here? Isabella Zavrisi spoke with him about his journey.
My name's Matthew Dunn, and I'm from Montague, but I'm currently living in Charlottetown at the Bedford McDonald House.
How long were you homeless for?
On and off for about a year. I mean, I've had opportunities where I would kind of start to overcome the homelessness, but with the struggles that I go through, there were some hurdles. And the poem that I wrote is basically a way of describing being mentally ill, struggling with addiction, overcoming those things, the feelings that are associated with being homeless, and trying to send a message for people that are still homeless to stay strong, and things are going to work out. The homeless life has definitely harmed me, but I have been blessed with a home from the Salvation Army. To the homeless person that is still suffering, stay strong as life is just buffering.
Was that the first time that you've written something like that?
First time I've ever written a poem.
What was that like?
It was good. I really enjoyed writing the poem. I didn't overthink it. I just kind of wrote the first thing that I was thinking at the time, and how it was a real reflection of how I was feeling at that time when I wrote it. Before I went to the Bedford McDonald House, I was kind of sleeping in cars, sleeping in banks. I got to that point mainly because of my addictions and my mental health, but it's real. There's a lot of people still out there that aren't fortunate enough to have a place to be able to call their own for even a night.
What do you hope people take away from this exhibit?
I guess mainly I would hope that people take away the fact that people that are homeless, they're not bad people. They go through hardships that may have brought them there, but some of the most genuine, beautiful people I've met are homeless people. So I hope that some people that are here maybe that may be a little bit of an eye-opener.
I think it will be. Much more still to come on Compass tonight before 7 o'clock. Coming up, we'll have more on PEI's proposed Residential Tenancy Act, which was released today. There were some developments today in the dispute over a gas pipeline in northern BC, so we'll have the very latest for you from Ottawa. Also tonight, authorities are preparing for the homecoming of Canadians who have been quarantined on that cruise ship in Japan, including a couple from right here on PEI. More on those stories ahead. First up, after the break, weather with Jay Scotland and more on the chilly temperatures tonight and into the morning. We're back in just over 3 minutes. Welcome back. Time for the full forecast now, and just had to take one little step outside today and know it was chilly, and it's going to be even chillier through the night, right?
Normally, Louise is complaining about how cold it is in the studio. But when you step in from outside today...
It is balmy in here.
And to be fair, honestly, it feels like you're in like a butcher shop or a deli or something when you step into our TV
Sometimes,
studio.
yeah.
You can hang meat in here. It's that cold. Tomorrow morning, though, it could be the third time, only the third time this winter. We've seen temperatures at Charlottetown Airport at or below -20. So this will be one of the coldest mornings we've seen so far this winter. Bundle up. Make sure the kids have the, when you're talking...
Wear your proper winter coat.
Yes, your proper winter coat. I know with some of the kids, as they get towards the teenage years, it's not cool to wear all the warm gear. But you'll see risk of frostbite being thrown out there. And that's because even though the winds are easing through the overnight hours tonight, we are watching for those wind chill values to still through the morning hours tomorrow be near -30. And even during the warmest part of the day, it'll be very near to even around -20. So very similar wind chill values that we saw today, despite there being lighter winds. And that is because certainly through the morning hours, those temperatures are going to be bitterly, bitterly cold. All right, there's a look at temperatures across the Maritimes this hour. Yeah, all 3 Maritime provinces. Temperatures are in the basement. Somebody left the fridge door open. It is bitterly cold. -14 is where the temperature sits this hour in Charlottetown Airport. Over to Summerside, Slemon Park, you're at -14. North Cape reporting station, -14. And look at that. If this was a poker hand, we'd have 4 of a kind here. This is great. -14 at East Point as well. With the winds being fairly light, the wind chill could be worse, but still feeling around or below -20. So another thing to keep in mind with temperatures this cold, just limit the time of outdoor time with the pets as well, as it is going to be certainly through the overnight hours tonight and early tomorrow morning, a very chilly one for our furry friends as well. So ridge of high pressure is in place. It's well to our west, but exerting its influence, and that will keep the sky fairly clear. I do expect with those winds out of the west to northwest to maybe produce a little bit of low cloud as we get up towards the North Shore over eastern PEI. But aside from that, most areas will be fairly clear through the overnight hours tonight. That ridge actually moves towards us into your Friday morning, and that will see that sky clearing out. We're going to look at almost uninterrupted sunshine for much of PEI through the day tomorrow. That will help us deal with the colder temperatures a bit more. It's nice to have the sunshine, and just know that once we get through your Friday, Saturday, Sunday, back to where temperatures should be, more seasonal values into the forecast for the weekend. So overnight temperatures over western PEI, you can expect around the -20 to -22 range for most areas. I would not be shocked, though, with the winds easing, the sky continuing to clear, that a few inland areas, low-lying in particular, could even be a little bit colder than that. And then tomorrow, a lot of sunshine, just not a lot of heat. It's not so much the sun this time of year, but the wind direction that is the biggest influence on our temperatures here on PEI. Central eastern areas around or below the -20 mark through the overnight hours tonight. Maybe a degree or two cooler even through the early to mid-morning tomorrow. Not really recovering that much for Friday afternoon. We do see those temperatures recover nicely for Saturday. Temperatures around -1 to -2. Slight chance for flurries, nothing too heavy. Winds will be a little bit brisk. We could be seeing winds out of the southwest in the 25 to 50K range on Saturday, but anyone planning travel, shouldn't be any issues with winds in the bridge, and the flurries not too heavy. Mix of sun and cloud on Sunday, temperature up to the freezing mark. Then we get a nice stretch of weather above the freezing mark next week. Beyond that, starts to cool off again, but after a couple of very cold days, I think that'll be a welcome sight for most. Not all, though. All right, let's take a look now at our temperatures across the country as we take a look at that national temperature map, and a big imbalance with heat all up west, or out west, I should say, and all of the cold over the eastern half of the country. That's the weather pattern we're seeing. And now our photo of the day comes from Dale Murchison, and this was skating on the Montague River. Oh, I love that rink. I cannot wait to get out on tour and see some of the backyard rinks, but there was a lot of shoveling involved in that. That looks fantastic. Thanks so much, Dale, for sending that one in. Very Canadian. Compass@cbc.ca to get us those photos by email. All the details on our website. Louise?
Thanks, Jay. Coming up, if you rent on PEI, you'll want to hear about some key changes coming for landlords and tenants. New draft legislation was revealed today, and starting in March, there will be new public consultations. More details for you just ahead on Compass.
Friday on the show, Ottawa provided PEI close to $800,000 to be spent on urban and rural projects to fight homelessness. We'll tell you about some of the Reaching Home projects that were successful and hear from one of the groups.
As we reported earlier tonight, the PEI government is proposing a significant overhaul of the province's rental laws. New draft legislation was released today, and government is asking for your input. Public consultations will begin in March. Amanda Blakeney is a Charlottetown lawyer consulting with the province on these changes and is my guest. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
So one of the big issues that we've heard a lot of Islanders talking about is rent evictions, and so this draft legislation does have measures in it to tackle that. So explain that for us.
Sure. So one of the major aspects of the proposed act involves an increased notice period to be given to tenants for evictions as a result of whether it be a renovation or a conversion of the property. So the current regime requires landlords to give tenants 60 days notice, but under the proposed act, that is extended to 6 months notice.
6 months. And those renovations would have to be extensive enough to require a building permit, right?
Yes, that is a new addition in the proposed act, whereas that wasn't a requirement of the current existing legislation. Yeah.
How do you see that helping tenants?
Well, it's an extra layer to prove that the renovations are extensive enough, truly, to require the unit to be vacant. Of course, when a tenant applies to IRAC, for example, if they disagree with a notice of termination under the current scheme, of course, IRAC does look at very detailed information submitted by the landlord, but a building permit, I believe, is sort of more of an objective idea that in the sense that the renovations would be so extensive they would require that.
And that is a significant time difference from 60 days to 6 months.
It is.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
What about rental increases and the issue around illegal increases?
Each year the director determines an amount, and previously the formula hadn't been specifically defined, but under the proposed legislation it is laid out there. So I think that provides some clarity to landlords and tenants.
There's a formula now.
There is a
where
formula.
There wasn't before.
There's also a cap on rent increases up to 2.5%.
2.5% per year cap.
Yes.
Okay. Now, because the vacancy rate is so low on Prince Edward Island, a lot of tenants feel they don't have the ability to challenge because they're fearful they won't find another place to live. So do you think these changes go far enough to help address that issue?
I think they do. I think having the increased notice periods will go a long way. Another important thing to note under the proposed legislation is that for some of the major reasons that landlords tend to evict tenants, for the renovations, for their own use if they wanted to use the property themselves, or if they were to sell the property, under the proposed legislation, a landlord can't actually issue that notice of termination during the school year if a tenant does have school-aged children, or if the tenant happens to be a school-aged child themselves. So there is an additional protection there for tenants built in, I believe.
That's really interesting because you don't want to pull them out of the school system or their school district during the year. On the other side, the landlord side, shorter timelines to evict tenants. Has that been a problem here?
It has been. You do hear some landlords, it can drag on for quite some time, especially if a tenant doesn't vacate the property when they're supposed to. But under the current legislation, a tenant is to vacate within 20 days from the date they receive a notice, but that's been shortened under the proposed act to 14 days. So hopefully that will give landlords some time to be able to have the unit repaired or cleaned up and ready to rent out more quickly.
Now, I know we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg here. I know just the surface, but you will be doing public consultations, and those begin in March, right?
Definitely, yes. So they began on March 9th, I believe. And the important thing, I think, to note is that this act is, it's a proposed act, but the consultation process is really designed to be able to get that input from the public, from landlords and from tenants alike, to determine what it is they'd like to see in this proposed act. So that's a really important piece, and we're hopeful that people will come out and really participate in that process.
Important that they come out because they could effectively change the draft legislation, right?
Exactly, yeah. So at this point in time, certainly government is open to hearing any suggestions for changes.
Good of you to join me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Benevolent Irish Society will be serving up a few laughs with its second annual theatre production. It's coming up in just a few weeks' time. A few folks behind this year's play will join Jay with some of the details ahead. So here's a question for you. Could your next online shopping spree be brought to you by a drone instead of a delivery person? An Ontario company is working toward exactly that goal, and the owner says the idea is closer to reality than you might think. CBC's Nick Boisvert has more on the plans and what it'll take to bring them to life.
It looks like a small helicopter, and this is a very basic two-stroke gasoline engine.
They call it the Condor, and like the bird, this drone can cover huge distances in a single journey. We're talking 200 kilometers, and all of it with some serious cargo on board.
You just simply open it with the latches on the door, and inside you can see we could fit about 20 cubic feet and up to 400 pounds of cargo.
The Condor is one of the newest offerings from Drone Delivery Canada, a local company with ambitions to shake up and, yes, disrupt the way almost anything can be delivered.
We're actually implementing customers as we speak and going live as we speak, so it's not a George Jetson kind of scenario.
The company mostly shuttles cargo in rural areas and for logistics companies in places like Milton and Vaughan. In those settings, the drones land in designated areas with trained operators on the ground. But something more revolutionary could be on the way. Right now, Transport Canada doesn't allow delivery drones in urban areas like downtown Toronto, but people in the industry expect that to change and for these skies to look a little different in just a few years. Few companies have been promoting that idea as enthusiastically as Amazon, which has already delivered products straight to customers in limited cases.
I do see us being able to, get a coffee or a pizza delivered by drone to our backyard.
Experts say the technology to do that safely already exists, and that tweaks to aviation rules are the last major hurdle.
When there's a lot of momentum behind it, when there's a lot of need for it, I think things can move fairly quickly.
Beyond online shopping, Drone Delivery Canada says its fleet could carry medical supplies or cargo to oil rigs. All of it much faster than any truck or helicopter. Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
The play, The Two Loves of Gabriel Foley, is coming to the island thanks to the Benevolent Irish Society of PEI. It is billed as a 3-act comedy currently being staged all over the world, but hey, you don't have to go that far. Jay got all the details on this event earlier today.
Well, I'm here with Mary Ellen, Paul, and Gordon from the Benevolent Irish Society, otherwise known as the BIS, right?
Correct.
And we're talking about a play it's a production that's in its second year, but there's a lot more history if we go back in time a little bit with this one, right?
Correct. We had the St. Patrick's Week play from 1880 to 1989, over 100 years continuously every year. So this is the revitalization in year 2. We had a 30-year span where we didn't have the play. We just didn't have enough volunteers, but we brought it back last year, and it went very well, and we're really looking forward to the second year now.
All right, so 2019, it came back after a hiatus. Over 100 years of history here. 2020, a new play. So this is not the same play that's been in place for over 100 years, right, Paul?
Correct.
So as the director, tell me quickly, what's this? It's a comedy. Tell me what this is called and what it's about.
It's called, The Two Loves of Gabriel Foley. Gabriel Foley is a man who's fast approaching middle age, and he's still a bachelor, and he wants to get married and have a family and whatever. His mother, who he lives with, Aggie, is continually on his back, nagging him to find somebody so that she can have a grandchild to spoil.
I remember my mom, if she's watching, bugging me for grandchildren. You have 2, Mom, so we're all good. So I could be a lot of comedic opportunity here. And Gordon, you play a character named Liam, right?
Yes, Jay, Liam Gavigan, and he's basically the supportive friend to Gabriel Foley, but in a good Irish play, the supportive friend has lots of jests and jabs and jeers with the main character, so it's lots of fun, and I love doing the role.
All right, and with 2 loves, I'm assuming a lot of comedic opportunity there. So it's going to be a lot of laughs. This is taking place at the BIS, right, which is located where?
It's on North River Road, 582, near where the Walmart is. And the play is running for 6 days, March 5th, 6th, 7th, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and March 10th, 11th, 12th, which is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So for 6 days.
And this is often a sellout. Last year it was. Most of these seats were sold. So if I want to get tickets, where would I do that? They're $20 a piece, and where do I get them?
www.eventbrite.com.
There you have it. So it's coming up very shortly, a great play with a lot of history, helping support the BIS and the work that they do. Eventbrite.com to get those tickets for $20.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks so much. If you'd like to be in our community segment, you can always get in touch with us here at CBC PEI. 2 ways to do that. You can give us a call, 629-6480, or you can always email us, compass@cbc.ca.
For your top stories from the East Coast, join me, Amy Smith, and meteorologist Ryan Snodden for Atlantic Tonight, right after the National.
More developments today in the dispute over a gas pipeline in northern BC. The RCMP is offering to move from their current location on a road in Wet'suwet'en territory to a nearby town. That's one of the demands by hereditary chiefs to oppose the pipeline going through their territory. And CN in Quebec has an injunction to clear a rail blockade that went up to show support for the chiefs. Julie Van Dusen has more.
Nerves are getting frayed at a rail blockade on the south shore of Montreal. This resident pleads for protesters to leave.
No, you're blocking billions of dollars of our economy.
The Premier of Quebec says the protest is not on First Nations land, and the province's police force is prepared to enforce an injunction to move protesters away.
This blockade is illegal. It has a major impact on our economy, on life of people. Right now, some people are losing their job.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau continues to face pressure from everywhere to end the chaos.
We're working very hard to end the blockades. It's an unacceptable situation.
In an effort to end the standoff, the British Columbia RCMP in the Wet'suwet'en territory has offered to move from the protest site to the nearby town of Euston.
I'm very hopeful that that will satisfy the concerns that were raised.
The Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs are against the Coastal GasLink pipeline. They also want the RCMP out of their territory. It's not clear if the RCMP move would make a difference. In solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en, the Mohawk near Belleville, Ontario, have maintained a protest camp for 15 days. It's brought rail traffic to a halt. The Mohawk are expecting a thank you visit soon from the Wet'suwet'en Hereditary Chiefs. No word if the Wet'suwet'en will meet with the federal government.
Mr. Bennett and I stand ready to go on a moment's notice, absolutely. Our expectation is that those discussions can be had over the course of tomorrow, as early as tomorrow morning.
In the Commons, the Conservatives continued their demand that the government forget the dialogue and act.
Can the Prime Minister tell us on what day these illegal blockades will come down?
The government agrees it's time for the barricades to come down in a peaceful way, but there's still no sense of when that might happen. Julie Van Dusen, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now, the impact of the railway blockades continues to grow. Estimates are that about $425 million worth of goods are sitting idle every day. Now, a major shipping company is diverting cargo away from Canada. Its CEO says customers are fed up with the delays. Brett Ruskin has more from Halifax.
Well, this is one of Halifax's shipping container terminals. You can see all the colorful containers and the green cranes lifting them onto ships, off of ships, onto trucks and trains for these containers that have come from around the world and are now going to be heading inland to across North America. At least that was the case before all of these blockades were put into place. And so one shipping container line has said they've had enough. They are pulling out of Halifax. This is ACL, a company that sends about 3 or so ships here, these big, giant cargo ships. And we've heard from the president and CEO of ACL, Andrew Abbott. Here's what he had to say. He said that our Canadian and U.S. operations have been shut down for the last 2 weeks because of what he calls this ridiculous situation. He says that the customers are fed up with this situation, and so they are moving their cargo operations away from Canadian ports like Halifax and down to U.S. ports. So those include places like New York, Baltimore, Virginia Beach as well, places where they can just as easily offload the cargo. The ships can stop there along the coast and then make their way onto train tracks that don't have to deal with these blockades and blockages. And so as of what this means for Halifax, well, the port business is a big deal here. It injects about $2 billion into local and provincial economies here. That's according to the Port of Halifax. It employs thousands of people as well. What we don't know yet is the overall impact of this shipping line pulling out of Halifax, exactly how many ships will be diverted away from Halifax, when this will begin, if it hasn't already begun, this diversion of ships away from Halifax, and whether or not these ship deliveries, these ship visits to facilities like this one will once again resume, and whether they'll come back when the situation with the blockades has been resolved. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
Authorities are preparing for the homecoming of Canadians who have been quarantined on that cruise ship in Japan. Those who tested negative for the coronavirus boarded a plane chartered by Ottawa and have started the journey home. CBC's Sasha Petrusik has more.
There are some 200 Canadians who are headed to Canada. They're going to reach Trenton, Ontario. They're going to be then bused to Cornwall, just near the Quebec border, and there they're going to spend another 2 weeks in quarantine. Now, all of these people are healthy. They've been tested. They do not have the virus, and they also were checked earlier today by Canadian medics. But for many of them, this is a very unsafe facility. This ship here that they've spent the last 2 weeks on, they were afraid of it, and they wanted to get out of it as quickly as they could because they felt that the infection was coming. And indeed, there has been an explosion of infections on that ship over the past 14 or 15 days. It started with one case. Now there are more than 600. And we are hearing now that the first 2 deaths have also occurred among people who were infected on the ship. 2 Japanese people, a man who is 87 years old, a woman who's 84 years old. Both of them had other health issues, and that made them particularly vulnerable. But you know, everybody in a way is vulnerable, and we've heard that others have died as well who are not that old and not susceptible in the same way. So the Canadians who left today were very, very worried. They didn't want to spend another moment here, and now they're on their way home. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Yokohama.
Last night, we told you more about the 2 islanders on that ship. On her Facebook page, Helen McKenna said they were on their way to the airport on a bus. We should know more tomorrow about the latest developments in their efforts to get back home. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is promising to step up the fight against rising far-right extremism in her country. A gunman went on a rampage overnight, and officials say he killed 9 people of, quote, foreign background.
Rassismus ist ein Gift.
Today, Merkel said racism is a poison Germany must overcome. Last night's shooting took place around 2 bars in a town east of Frankfurt. Both are frequented by immigrants. The gunman's car was then traced to his home, where 2 more bodies were found, the suspect and his mother. The man had posted extremist videos online and a rambling manifesto reportedly calling for the extermination of many races. It was the 3rd deadly attack by a far-right extremist in Germany in the past year. Sentencing was handed down today in a case that triggered a revolt within the U.S. Justice Department. Roger Stone is a longtime ally of Donald Trump. He was sentenced to more than 3 years behind bars for, to quote the judge, covering up for the president. CBC's Katie Simpson has more.
Traitor! Unfazed by the taunts, Roger Stone arrived at a Washington court to learn his fate, to learn his punishment for lying to Congress, which hindered the investigation into Russian election interference. Justice Amy Berman Jackson sentenced Stone to 3 years and 4 months in prison, far less than up to 9 years prosecutors originally demanded. Jackson took more than 2 hours to explain her decision, saying Stone's actions were a threat to our most fundamental institutions, and the dismay and the disgust at the attempts by others to defend his actions as just business as usual in our polarized climate should transcend party.
These radical leftists are out of control, Alex.
Stone's former co-workers who operate in the world of smear politics aggressively defended their friend with a show in front of the cameras.
This case has been a magnet for conspiracy theorists, and outside the courthouse today, an online alt-right broadcaster tried to seize the moment, demanding a pardon for Roger Stone.
A pardon appears to be something the president is at least considering.
And I'm following this very closely, and I want to see it play out to its fullest because Roger has a very good chance of exoneration, in my opinion.
Trump issued pardons to nearly a dozen other people on a range of crimes earlier this week, though he has not committed either way to his friend's case.
What happened to him is unbelievable. They say he lied. But other people lied too.
Trump's continued comments about this case have triggered a raging battle at the Department of Justice. Attorney General William Barr publicly complained that Trump's words make his job harder to do. But Barr also asked the judge here to consider a lighter sentence, prompting the original prosecutors involved to quit. Stone left court uncharacteristically quiet, eager to see if his old friend Donald Trump, who he did so many favors for, will return one for him. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Police have charged 3 boys with multiple offenses following a violent bank robbery last night just north of Toronto. Police say the boys are 13, 15, and 16 years old, and that they went into a bank in Markham armed with guns and knives, then proceeded to stab 2 employees and kick 2 others in the face. Police say the boys ran from the scene but were found hiding in a home under construction. They now face several charges, including robbery with a firearm, aggravated assault, unauthorized possession of a firearm, and disguise with intent. Police are continuing to investigate. The death of a man in a snowmobile accident in New Brunswick is raising questions about ambulance services in the local community. Paramedics refuse to go to the scene, citing safety concerns, and a town councillor, who is also a firefighter, wants more answers about why. Hadiya Ibrahim reports.
Dalhousie residents' faith in their ambulance service is shaken. They want to know paramedics are equipped and ready to help them no matter where they get hurt. But Ambulance New Brunswick rules say if paramedics don't feel safe, they don't have to respond to a scene.
And the paramedics are standing in Dalhousie's fire truck in their rescue van, staying nice and warm.
Kevin Levine made the speech and posted a video on Facebook about what happened. He wants Ambulance New Brunswick to reassure Dalhousie residents that they are protected.
They, Ambulance New Brunswick, should have responded to that call. They, Ambulance New Brunswick, should have done their job.
Levine was the one who took the 911 call on January 17th. A snowmobile had exploded on this trail in town. The accident was a kilometer off the road into the trail. Firefighters were able to reach the scene on foot in office clothes. 22-year-old Logan Harvey was fatally injured. Firefighters spent 45 minutes performing CPR because the paramedics said they were not equipped to go on the trail and did not feel it was safe for them to do so. Ambulance New Brunswick rules say if paramedics don't feel safe, they can't and don't have to respond to a scene. Andrew McLean with the Paramedics Union says paramedics have to prioritize their safety as well as their patients. Harvey's mother, Karen St. Ange, says she's disappointed in how AMB handled their job as paramedics. She said the fire department took over that evening and did everything possible to try to save her son. But for Ambulance New Brunswick, she has one message. She says she's totally disgusted with their services. This case was considered a remote rescue because paramedics couldn't see the scene from their ambulance and couldn't reach it by foot. They decided they needed a snowmobile and heavy-duty winter clothes. They didn't have this equipment, so they asked the RCMP to help bring it to them. Community members were able to track down a rescue snowmobile, but the RCMP did not find the winter clothes in time. Hadil Ibrahim, CBC News, St. John.
Here's a look at how the markets performed today. The Canadian dollar lower, trading on average lower today, 75.45 cents U.S. The TSX managed to inch out again today, up 18 points. Can't say the same for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. There seems to be a lot of concerns about the economic impact of coronavirus, and that was weighing on investors today. The price of oil was a little bit higher, 39 cents. So the oil price closed at $53.88 U.S. a barrel, and gold was $8.70 U.S. an ounce higher today. Yes, you are. An enthusiastic group. Jay had a chance to visit Spring Park School today to talk, well, what about the weather, of course.
I don't know what kind of coffee they have.
I
Do they drink coffee at 10 years old?
I hope not.
I hope not. No.
What a great group of kids. Were they as engaged when you were there in person?
Yeah, those are the grade 5s.
Yeah.
Awesome. They had a lot of questions, really, really good questions. And it always blows my mind just how much research. But they've been doing a weather unit at Spring Park for a few weeks now, so they were already pretty knowledgeable on all things weather. So hopefully I was able to add a few new things into the mix, but thanks so much for having me, and I'm getting into that busy season.
Oh, you know what? The kids love hearing about it, and you do such a good job with those presentations.
I love it. So
I know you do.
If you're a teacher,
that's what they're feeding us.
I can't get to every school on the island, but send me an email, reach out. I love doing those school visits. All right, let's take a look at, for the kids getting to school tomorrow, that walk or that wait on a bus. Cover up the extremities. You'll need the hats, the mitts. Make sure the ears are covered up, the nose is covered up with the scarf, because you do have a risk of frostbite when the temperature at 7 a.m. is -21, wind chill near -30. Despite the winds being fairly light, winds will pick up a little bit, but they become more southwesterly into the afternoon. Still going to be quite cold. Lots of sunshine. Temperatures improve, though, for Saturday and Sunday.
All right, good. So, yes, good advice there. Bundle up in the morning, even though you don't think it looks cool sometimes. You know I'm talking to you. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night, PEI.